Hey everyone, and welcome back to another installation video brought to you by Rockford Fosgate. As always, I'm Rico Felice with the Rockford Technical Training Institute, and in this video, we're going to take a look at the installation of some of our new Harley Davidson motorcycle-specific products. So let's go inside our R&D department and see how these products are installed on the motorcycles. Alright guys, I am joined by Brad with our new product development team, and he's going to help us walk through the installation of our front audio kit on this 2015 Road Glide motorcycle. Now Brad, what all is included involved in this kit?
In the kit, we're including a pair of our TMS 65 speakers, our RFK HD amplifier installation kit, as well as our TM 400X4AD amplifier.
Okay, now is there anything special that these guys need to know before they begin the install?
We recommend having your Harley taken to the dealership and having it flashed, so that way it has the better EQ curve to go with our amplifier.
Alright, so remember that. Go to the Harley dealer, get it flashed, and let's move on and get this thing installed.
To begin our speaker installation, we're going to start by removing the factory grille. I'm going to use my hook tool, prying from the inside of the grille, just below the plastic. We want to pull up towards the handlebars to release the clips, and then remove the grille.
Now once the grille has been removed, we're able to take our T25 Torx driver and remove the 4 screws that hold the speaker in place, and then remove the speaker itself. Alright guys, so once you have the 4 screws out, you can lift the speaker out of the fairing and disconnect the audio connections.
With our factory speaker removed, we're now ready to install our new TMS 65. We're going to start by connecting the speaker wires and then mounting it into the enclosure itself. After that, we're going to move to the other side of the bike and repeat the same process.
Alright, so now that we have our speakers installed, we're ready to move on to the amplifier installation. So Brad, what's the next step in the process?
Our next step is going to be to start to remove the front fairing.
Alright, well let's get started on that.
The first step in to remove the front fairing is to remove the windscreen assembly. I'm going to use this number 2 Phillips screwdriver to remove the screws.
While he's doing that, I'm going to lay down this packing pad over the front fender to protect it just in case anything falls. Alright guys, so now that we have the windshield assembly taken apart, the next thing we want to do is remove the bolt located at the back side of the marker light using a 3/16 Allen wrench. Now, once you have this one out, you're going to repeat the process on the other side for the other marker.
Now that he has the 2 marker light bolts removed, we can now proceed to the 2 T25 screws on the lower side of the fairing.
Alright guys, so before we remove the remaining screws holding the fairing on, we want to make sure that we disconnect the 2 harnesses here at the top of the fairing that go to our marker lights. This will make it easier to take the fairing off when we're ready.
With the other harnesses disconnected, we can now move on to removing the last 2 screws of the fairing. We're going to do so with our T27 Torx driver. The 2 screws are located right next to the speaker on either side. Now a little tip, if you're doing this by yourself, leave the last one only hand tight, so when you go to remove the fairing, you can reach around and remove the last couple threads.
Alright guys, so now that the fairing is removed, the next thing we want to do is remove the headlight assembly. First step in doing this is we need to disengage the 2 harnesses attached at the top using a panel removal tool.
Now once he has those 2 removed, we can now use our 3/16 Allen driver to remove the 4 bolts holding it in, 2 on the upper and 2 on the lower part of the housing. With those removed, we can now remove the headlight assembly, unplug its harness, and set it aside. At this point, we're ready to remove the seat to gain access to the battery. We're going to do so by removing the bolt at the rear of the seat.
Alright, so now that we have the seat removed, we've gained access to all the mounting hardware for the gas tank. What we're going to do is remove the 2 1/2-inch bolts located at the front of the tank, 2 1/2-inch bolts located here at the rear of the tank. We'll be disengaging the 2 wiring harnesses, as well as removing the vent and overflow tubes. Lastly, we'll be disconnecting the fuel line located at the bottom of the gas tank.
With the fuel tank now disconnected from the motorcycle, we can remove it and set it aside.
Alright guys, so now with the gas tank out of the way, we're able to gain access to the ECM and the battery cover. So what we're going to do is we're going to disengage the ECM, lay it aside, and then we're going to remove the 2 1/2-inch bolts to hold the battery cover in place and move it out of the way so we can gain access to the battery.
Now that we have the battery accessible, we're going to move on to removing the cover to our wire channel that we're going to run our wiring in from the amplifier.
Alright guys, so now that we have the wire chase cover removed, we're ready to go ahead and run our power and ground wire from the fairing area along the backbone to the battery and make those connections. Now as a side note, whenever you purchase our kit, we also include a rear speaker wiring harness. Now as you can see, this bike does not currently have a rear speaker option, so we're not going to be installing that. However, if you have the tour pack or are thinking of adding the tour pack with rear speaker option, this is another wiring harness that you can also install to be able to route audio from the amplifier back to your rear speakers. Alright, so once we have the wire run up through the backbone, we're ready to go ahead and make the connections at the battery. Once the connections are made, we can take our fuse holder and simply tuck it down in front of the battery compartment. Okay, at this point, we're ready to go ahead and reinstall the battery cover as well as the ECM. Alright, so now that we have the battery cover and ECM back in place, we're ready to go ahead, clean up our wires, and reinstall the wire chase cover. Alright guys, so now that we have the cover back in place, we can move back to the front of the bike to continue the install. Alright, so back at the front of the bike, the next thing we need to do is interconnect our speaker input and output harnesses to the factory speaker connectors.
When doing so, take note to the labels labeled for brake side and clutch side to get the left and right properly done. Now that we have those connected, we can move over to the bench and prep our amplifier.
Alright guys, so we're over here at our bench. We're going to get our amplifier mounting plate all prepped. So Brad, what parts do we need to make this happen?
We're going to use the supplied 2015 and up Road Glide bracket and our universal mount. We're going to use the 4 supplied screws to do so.
Alright, well, let's get that done. Then we can get the amplifier prepped. Alright, so now that we have the amplifier mounting plate with the right bracket on it, we can talk about the settings of the amplifier itself. We want to go ahead and set the amplifier up here on the bench before we put it in the motorcycle because the controls themselves are inaccessible or very difficult to access once it's actually mounted under the fairing. Alright, the first setting on the amplifier is a 2-channel and 4-channel switch. Because this is a front audio system only, we're going to keep the switch in its default 2-channel position. Next are the frequency controls. These control the crossover frequency for both the front and rear output of the amplifier. We're going to adjust both of those controls to approximately 80 Hz. This will ensure the proper mid-range and, more importantly, that mid-bass output gets to the speakers. The 2 switches in the bottom row are for the crossovers themselves. We're going to position both of those in the high pass position to ensure that the low bass frequencies prevent going to the speakers, damaging the speakers themselves. we're going to leave the EQ controls at their low settings. And the gain controls, we are going to adjust until they are at approximately the 2 o'clock position, or the line is in alignment with the in min. Now, based on our experience with this motorcycle and the output of the radio, as well as the performance of the speakers, we've determined that this is typically the best position for best performance. Now that we have the amplifier all set up, we're ready to go ahead and install it on our mounting plate.
To install the amplifier, we're going to make sure that we have the power connector on the same end as our mounting tabs. This way, when we install it in the bike, everything lines up perfectly. So we're going to install the amp using the 4 supplied screws that came in the kit.
Alright guys, and now that we're back from the bench, we're prepping our amplifier, we're ready to get it into the motorcycle. Now a couple things to note before we put this in. On the back of the amplifier bracket, you'll notice a raised metal lip. Now this lip is going to engage a metal crossbar up inside the motorcycle itself. The 2 mounting tabs on either side will then get bolted to the side pieces here on either side just below the radio. Now one of the things we need to make sure we do before we slide the amplifier in is plug in our input harness to the back side of the amplifier, because once the amplifier is installed, we're not going to be able to get to that input side. Alright guys, so now that we have the amplifier mounted in the bike, we're ready to make the final audio and power connections, and then we're going to test this thing out, make sure everything's working okay. So we're going to connect our power and ground harness, our output audio harness, and most importantly, our remote wire connection. Now this signal is important because that's what tells the amplifier to turn on and off whenever you power the radio and bike on. So you've got to make sure you turn this on or else the amp's not going to work. This connection is made up here at the top to the secondary harness that's available. Simply plug it in. Alright guys, so now that we've done a full checkout on the bike, made sure everything's working properly, the speakers are sounding good, we're ready to go ahead, button this thing up, get it back on the road. Alright guys, so as you can see, it was a pretty straightforward and easy install. hopefully you were able to follow along, got some good information out of it as we were doing it. So Brad, any final thoughts before we let them go?
If you have any questions, feel free to give our tech guys a call. They'll be more than happy to help you out.
And as always, check out our website for more information, for more videos, and hopefully we'll see you again in another installation video.